Can the Portuguese teams challenge in Europe if they didn't lose their star players? Hello and welcome to the What If League. Today I'm doing an experiment. What would happen if the three biggest Portuguese teams, meaning Porto, Sporting Clube de Portugal and Benfica, have their star players back, and how would that affect their performance? So for this experiment, what I have done is I have taken 12 players that used to play for one of those three teams, and I have transferred them back into the Portuguese team, so that we can see what happens. Now, I want to show you first of all what that means and how this experiment is going to go down, starting with Benfica. And you can see that I have transferred Nicolas Gaitan, Nemanja Matic, Ederson, Victor Lindelof, Axel Witsel, Nelson Semedo, André Gomes, Javi Garcia, David Luiz, Renato Sanchez, Angel Di Maria, and Gonçalo Guedes to Benfica. So they are now back at Estadio da Luz, and we are going to see how their performance is going to help Benfica in the next few seasons. I have done the same for Sporting as well, and here the 12 transfers were João Mario, Adrian Silva, Islam Slimani, Marcos Rojo, Miguel Veloso, Cedric, Ruben Semedo, Mauricio, Naldo, Eric Dyer, Marvin Zeguilar, and the biggest star of them all, Cristiano Ronaldo. So this means that Cristiano Ronaldo is now back at José Alvalade, and at least I am very eager to see how he performs in Portuguese Primeira Liga, and also whether he helps his old team to have some more success in the European competitions. And finally, Porto, which is José Mourinho's old team. Keep in mind that José Mourinho is still with Manchester United. I have not moved managers. This is just about players. So in Porto, the 12 transfers were James Rodriguez, Hulk, Radamel Falcao, André Silva, Jackson Martinez, Danilo, Eliakim Mangala, Alexandro, João Moutinho, Janely Imbua, Ruben Neves, and Juan Iturbe. Now, for this experiment, I have also given all three teams £50 million in their bank account, which means that I have removed all of their debt and give them 50 million on top of that. So now, practically, if I can just show you here for Porto, and you can imagine that it's similar for all three teams, their bank balance now says 50 million instead of the negative number with which they start. They don't have a transfer budget since I have removed the option for starting transfer budgets in the game, and they have, I think, at least I hope they have sufficient funds so they don't have to sell their star players from the very beginning. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to fast forward until the end of this season so that we can see how things develop. Now the date is 2nd of June 2018, which means that the first season has ended, and in Portugal the new champions are Sporting Clube de Portugal. They ended with the same points as Porto, 82 points, but have a bit better goal difference, 5 goals better, which was significantly influenced by one Cristiano Ronaldo, who ended as the best player in the league with the most goals, and also picking up the most player of the match awards. As you can see on the screen, Ronaldo ended the season with 29 goals against his name, which was 13 more than anybody else in the league, which is a very, very good performance. I am very surprised that, actually no, I shouldn't be, because he can still score goals in the Spanish La Liga. Why shouldn't he be able to score it in the Portuguese Primeira Liga? So, but in the end, this is what it is. Now you can see that Porto are second and Benfica are far off in third position, 12 points behind the first two, which is surprising to me. I would have expected them to be able to compete more. If we have a look how things developed, let's look at past positions here, and let's focus on the three teams that we were looking for. So the blue line is Sporting. They didn't start very well. Actually, they started with a loss. No, they started with a win. It was just not the biggest win in the league. Okay. Then somewhere in the middle of the season, they started switching positions with Porto. and in the end, in the last 4 rounds, they got the first position and run with it. On the other hand, we see that Benfica were leading the race only for a little while, around 7th, 8th and 9th round, and then they drew away to Feirense. They lost at home to Sporting, and that's where things really went bad for them. They occupied the 3rd position for a lot of time. They were actually 4th, but in the end they claimed the 3rd position again. In any case, now let's have a look at the 3 teams individually and see how did they perform in Europe and what happened with the 12 transferred players. Starting with Sporting Clube de Portugal, the champions. Key player is Cristiano Ronaldo, which is not a surprise at all. If we look at their tactics screen, we can see that he is playing as the most advanced striker there. Who else do we have here? Rojo is now in the starting team and Semedo is in the starting team, but everybody else is from the current crop of players for Sporting, of course. Now let's have a look at the transfers. Have they sold anyone? Let's see. Mauricio was sold, so he did not stay for a lot of time. Eric Dyer was also sold. Miguel Veloso was sold. Naldo was sold. I'm very surprised here. Marvin Zegular was sent on loan, so they decided not to keep all of those players, even though they have the money. Let's look at their finance screen and see what happened. They're already in debt, although they have a very big budget. So what is that? They have 23 millions of transfer money. Okay. But they sold some of their players, including Eric Dyer, which is one of their key players, I imagine, to Paris Saint-Germain for 64 million pounds. And even with that sum, they are in the red in terms of money, so that's quite interesting. Okay, let's see their schedule. How did they perform? So in the Champions League, they won the entrance playoff after defeating Napoli. So this is a huge success to begin with. Then they started with a win against Anderlecht away from home. Goal by Cristiano Ronaldo, of course. They lost their second game at home to Barcelona, so I'm sure that he was very disappointed, although he was the best player from his team. A cup win here, then they lost away to Manchester United, so they have a very tough group with Barcelona and Manchester United. I imagine that they did not qualify, so they lost to Manchester United. Adrien Silva scored a goal in that game. At home they lost again. Bas Dost scored the game. Another cup win. Then they defeated Anderlecht, which probably secured them 3rd position. Another cup win. Oh, they beat Barcelona away from home with 2 goals from Cristiano Ronaldo and 1 from Sebastian Coates. So this is very interesting. Champions Cup Group E. Liverpool won that cup, you can see from now, but let's see what happened first with Sporting. They finished in 3rd position, just a point behind Barcelona. This was probably a very, very tight competition, a very interesting group to watch. Now, if we continue with their performance here, we can see that in the cup, they lost in the 5th round to Maritimo on penalties. Then in the League Cup, they went to the semi-final where they lost to Porto, and then their Europa League adventure began against Villarreal, which they eliminated in the 1st knockout round, but they lost to Lazio in the 2nd knockout round and finished the season very, very strongly, you can see, with 8 straight victories to claim the Portuguese title. Okay, so this is what happened with Sporting. Now let's see what happened with Porto. So first of all, James Rodriguez is now their star player. You can see from this screen. In the transfer screen, if we look what happened, Alexandro was sold to Paris Saint-Germain for 35 million pounds. So this is one of their players being sold. Danilo was sold to Tottenham as well for 23 million pounds, and they apparently did not keep those 2 players. Let's look at their finances. Are they in a similar position? No, they're much, much better. As you can see, they have a big transfer budget. They have a lot of money in the bank, and they have increased their payroll budget. So apparently Porto are doing things better than Sporting in some sense. I'm not sure if they got more money, 122 million pounds, which is how does this compare to Sporting? Let's see. 74, so they got 50 million pounds more. Yes, this is quite significant difference, and maybe it explains why they're doing so well financially. In any case, Porto are now in a better financial situation. If we look at their tactics screen, we can see Falcao is playing here, Rodriguez is playing, Hulk is here, Imbula, Moutinho, Mangala is also here. So a lot of players that I transferred in the beginning are now part of their first team and are probably helping them quite a lot to challenge. Let's look at the schedules now. So their Champions League performance began with a win at home to CSKA Moscow. Then they won against Olympiacos, a cup win as well. Lost away to Paris Saint-Germain, and then another loss to Paris Saint-Germain, but this is a significantly easier group than Sporting's, and I'm sure that they would progress from here. Afterwards, they recorded another cup win, then beat CSKA Moscow away from home. Braga, they drew with Braga in the League Cup third phase Group D. Olympiacos were beaten at home 3-1. Then they defeated Feireze in the Portuguese Cup fifth round. Afterwards, they started the League Cup competition with 2 wins against Boavista and Chaves. Vitória Guimarães, however, eliminated them from the Taça de Portugal 6th round. Taça de Portugal is the Portuguese FA Cup, sort of speak, the bigger cup competition. Then they eliminated Sporting in the League Cup semi-final, which we already saw, but lost the final to Portimonense on penalties. So this is quite interesting. None of the 3 big teams actually won the League Cup in this season. They qualified for the Champions League first knockout round, where they drew with Manchester City at home 1-1 with a goal from Radamel Falcao, but lost away from home 0-3. This was a crushing defeat, and they have to afterwards they had to focus on the local Primera Liga, where they had a very good finish of the season with 7 wins out of their last 9 games, with only 1 loss to Braga and 1 draw with Benfica. What I forgot to mention is that in the middle of January they lost in the Cup 6th round against Vitória Guimarães. Now switching our attention to Benfica, where Nemanja Matic is now the star player. Again, not a really big surprise. Let's look at their transfers, what happened there. Looking at their transfers, they did not sell anyone from the big stars that were brought back, which makes their ending in third position even more surprising. Let's look at their finances as well. Oh, they have a big problem there, 85 million pounds in the red. So I'm sure that they would have to sell now. They would definitely have to sell, because otherwise they're not really in a sustainable model. But we'll see how it actually develops in the next few seasons. Let's look at the tactics screen. Gonzalo Guedes is up top with Gaetan and Di Maria on the wings. André Gomes is in the middle of the field. Matic and Javi Garcia are then just behind him and in front of the back 4, where we find David Luiz, Lindelof and Semedo, all 3 of them. So if we look at this team, it's completely, with the exception of the goalkeeper Bruno Varela, it's completely made of players that were transferred in this experiment specifically. So apparently they completely replaced their playing squad. Let's look at their schedule and what happened in this season. They started badly in the Champions League, losing away to Spartak Moscow 0-3. This was a very disappointing performance, I'm sure. They then lost at home to Ajax. They had a win in the Portuguese Cup. Another loss to Atletico Madrid at home. So apparently the Champions League was not a pleasant event for them. That's very unfortunate for Benfica fans. Another loss to Atletico Madrid. So this is 4 losses so far, and they have not even scored a goal in the Champions League. And we can see that after a win in the Cup 4th round, they lost their 5th game in the Champions League, this time at home to Spartak Moscow, with their first goal from Jonas. He has been a very important player this season as well. Let's go back here and see. Then they lost in the League Cup third phase Group C against Portimonense, and won their single point in the Champions League after drawing with Ajax away from home with a goal from Andreas Samaris. And that was it for them in the Champions League and the European competitions. Because these results did not merit a place in the Europa League, they had to focus in the domestic competitions, where in the League Cup they beat Feirense and Real. Afterwards, in the Portuguese Cup, they eliminated Gil Vicente in the 6th round. They went to the semi-final, which they drew with Maritimo in the first leg. Then in the second leg, they beat them 2-0. And in the final of the cup, they defeated Vitória Guimarães. So Benfica actually won a trophy that season. It was the Portuguese Cup trophy, and it is something. Although they finished third and they had a horrible performance in the European competitions, they did won a domestic trophy. So good on them. Interesting performance. I'm very concerned for their financial state in the next seasons. I think that their wages structure is simply not going to be sustainable. You can see that Angel Di Maria, for example, is on a £350,000 contract. So this is going to be very, very difficult for them. I'm sure that they would have to sell, or they're going to break the financial fair play rules. So let's see what happens now in the next season. However, since this video is now becoming quite long, I think I'm going to leave the next seasons for another video, and we're going to see part 2 of this experiment. So that's it for this video, guys. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That way you're going to receive notifications for when I upload new videos. In the meantime, you can also check out my social media. Links will be provided in the description below. Let me know what you think about this experiment, and if you would like to see something specific next, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Once again, thank you for watching, and until the next time, bye!